Okay, this is a bit of a note to self, though I may upload this video for students as well. The point is good to get into library files, LIB files, and it's typically the case whenever you use code that somebody else has written, especially for a big project, I think, that you encounter these lib files, library files. There are also these DLL files. We can actually almost certainly see an instance of that if we go to the output window pane. Yeah, a bunch of DLL files dynamically linked to libraries. So kernel 32 under system 32 and the Windows operating system. So some DLL files. It's good to demystify this and investigate what's going on. And symbols loaded. This is related to functions. Okay, so I've made one project. It consists of two files, a file called simple library test.cpp. It includes some things. It includes this header file. The only content in this header file, I'm using a particular namespace, maybe because the application of the application in which I've seen libraries used is OpenGL, and it can be kind of a struggle to, which is a 3D graphics library, GL graphics library, and it can be a bit of a struggle to get a triangle appearing on your screen on your terminal in OpenGL, partially because for a bunch of reasons, but partially because of the use of libraries. That's a slight barrier to entry for most beginners. I would imagine all beginners. Okay, but in OpenGL, namespaces are used, I'm sure. Okay, so just two function declarations, not definitions, inside this namespace is all that's here in the header file. And the only change I just made was the comment OpenGL, which is not relevant here. Um, so the CPP file does not have a main function. This is an important point. I commented out the main function because it led to an error in a minute here. So the simple library test.cpp pound includes the header file where the function declarations are made. And here are the function definitions. So this is the entire content of the CPP file, right? So a first step to make a library file, a lib file extension, which is a compiled file. If we attempt to look at the, if we attempt, we see these books here, it's kind of a cute little thing. And the DLL files usually have the gear icon associated with it in visuals in Windows by default. If we attempt to edit in Notepad, it's not human readable. It's got some human readable content, but in general, it's not readable. We'll talk about file sizes in a bit, but how did I make this? Usually, the default setting in Visual Studio is if we go to Properties and General, under the configuration properties, usually the default is set to be an executable file. It definitely will be worth looking into the make file in the future. So I say apply and OK. And when I run this program, let me just change it. When I run this program, it's going to say there's no main function. Okay. That's what that error means. So just to make this run in the usual way, we run and then we see this got printed by the demo function and by demo function number one. So is that okay? And we see hello world and press any key to continue. And we could also call the demo int function as well. Of course, we are using the namespace demo library. Okay, so this just makes sense. But a new thing to do is to, as we saw previously, is to make a static library file, static versus dynamic. We'll talk a bit about that. Um, so the executable file just got updated at 206, which was 1 minute ago. The executable file is also not human readable. Okay. So it was written to 206. The library file, the lib file here was written at 2 o'clock. So now, since I have selected the, what is it, the configuration type is the name of this parameter as an lib file. If I move the zoom thing out of the way and make sure I'm screen sharing. Used to have used to be more obvious when we were screen sharing. And I'm pretty sure I don't want to screw this up, so let me do this again. Screen share, screen one. Okay, we're working. All right, so now if I click the debug button as usual, I see an error and it says unable to start lib because it's not an executable, it's not a valid Windows 32-bit application. Doesn't have anything necessarily to do with the 64 here. That is worth investigating. Configuration manager. Okay, I was just playing around there. Yeah, this seems like a bad problem, but it did. Let's see if I go build solution. 0 succeeded, 0 failed, 1 is up to date, so there were no changes to the build. All right. I'm gonna keep the main function here for now. And did we see an update to the lib file? Yes, it did update. Though the output here is a little bit misleading. Usually it says 0 succeeded. Let me change the function definition here to 421, and we'll see it's no longer up to date. So let me rebuild that. Say build solution, and now it says 1 succeeded. Okay, but again, if I try to generate an executable file, if I try to run the program, it won't work, and I think the exe file won't be updated. Yeah, it won't. Written to 206, it's now 209, so now the library file was just updated at 209. We're unable to start the program. Okay, there's still a main function. All right, so why are we doing this? Why include library files at all? Well, we can't read the text of this program. If we have proprietary function definitions or function definitions that we don't want somebody to screw up, and we just give them access to the library files and not the CPP files, the implementation files, we can prevent someone from seeing or screwing up the definitions of our functions. That's one reason. And is there also a speed benefit, a performance benefit to using these library files rather than having a ton of, we're going to open a new project in a minute called simple or testing library inclusion. And I could have a ton of CPP files in, like I could put this CPP file with, with without the main function. I could copy this right here. I could copy it, and in the testing library inclusion, I could add a second, I could say right click, add new item, and make a CPP file. And I could say pound include simple library test .h, and the CPP file would have the function definitions that correspond to the declarations in simple library test.h. Okay, I could do that, but then when I run or build, it has to rebuild into separate object files, which I haven't shown here, but there are files called OBJ files, and link them together into an executable file. So I'm trying to make the point that I believe if we don't use library files, but we just make a bunch of CPP files in this folder here, it will take longer to build. The application, the executable program will run maybe with the same speed as usual, but the build process can become very long. Building is taking these things that we often that are often called translation units, separate CPP files, making them into these OBJ files, object files, and then linking them together into a single executable file. I'm not trying to get too deep into how compilers and linkers and loaders and all that work, but this is a neat thing to be able to do if for no other reason than to understand like OpenGL and many other libraries like Open Computer Vision, OpenCV. Okay, so we are, let's see, we are done with this for now. I'm not going to make any changes, except I am going to make a change in a minute. So how did now right now, if I run this, there will be an error. And that error says that main is already defined in this object file. And good, I'm glad that that came up because let's see, where is this object file? Simple, let's move this. And do we see a file path here? Can we double click on this and go to it? It's a linker error. That's nice to see. File name is this simple library test.obj. Okay, where is that? Is it, let's look, open folder and file explorer, and it's somewhere in there. I've got the timing result. Just ignore that CSV file. Okay, okay, there's the program debug database thing, which I often joke is the protein data bank in biochemistry. Okay. So object file 64 debug. There it is. Okay, the object file is also not readable if we edit it. Okay, there's an object file. It's 755 kilobytes, which I believe is larger than the lib file. Is that larger? Let's see. Yes, it's quite a bit larger. So that's interesting to note. Okay. Oh yeah, it says main is already defined in the object file. And the problem there is in this CPP file, I have a main function, testing library inclusion.cpp. And in this, I also have a main function. So I'm going to comment this out and rebuild, and we will see an update to it. Okay, so say build, don't try to run because I have this set not as an executable. And what was that called once again? The configuration type. Yeah, it's a library. So not gonna run, not gonna attempt to run. Just say build solution. I just changed it so we see succeeded. Okay. All right. So now if I come back to the testing library inclusion, it will work. Okay, it says 421 because I said demo int function. If I right click, I haven't done this yet. Peek at the definition. All right, and that's nice to see because for me, it's nice to see. This is just a function declaration. It's not the definition of the function. The definition of the function is hidden. It's in, and that's real nice to see. In a way, it's an unpleasant thing that this detail is hidden from us. Like in OpenGL, we want to understand things deeply, possibly. Okay, but that's very neat to see. It's the first time I've seen that. Okay, but this works, and how did it work? Because usually it won't work. Might be easier to start a new project and okay. Well, I don't know, it works. Maybe I'll just stick with it here. So notice that I am using angle brackets here. I could use double quotes like this, and this will also work. Simple library test.h is actually, it's not in the, if I go to document, here it is. If I pin it, and let me get rid of these other things for a minute, because those are beside the point. Simple library test is not, if we just hover on the file path, it's at work, desktop, let me just read it off instead of trying to gesture. And open containing folder. All right, it's a simple library test under miscellaneous. Okay. And this CPP file is not in the same place. Too many things open, probably. Testing library inclusion is here in testing library inclusion. And these are in different locations. So usually this would generate an error because this is it's a relative file path. But, and usually if I were to try to do something like this, if this file is not in the same folder as the CPP file, it's not going to work, or it's not in the locations where these, it's not in the include directories is what I'm trying to say. So if I say IO manip, this directory with the compiler version is one of the standard include directories. And the way you get to this is you right click and say properties. Is that, okay. I was just checking that's working now. So properties, and by default, when you open that up, it's set to what's selected is configuration properties, go to directories and the include directories. Notice that I have added that. So if we say edit and we come here, we can paste the file path where that header file is, which is right here. That's where the header file is at. So mis simple libfile test, simple libfile test is what we're looking at right here. There are better ways to do this, like using using certain shortcuts, like the dollar business and solution dir and this type of stuff, the VC include path and the Windows standard developer kit include path. Okay, that's how you add the to the include directories. This is not a big deal. It's just a convenient thing. We could add more include directories, but that will enable us to use this right here. Kind of a relative file path rather than absolute file path. Yeah. All right. So that's that. And now and I'm still using that namespace business, but if you let me undo the options that I've already done. I think maybe I should have done this way in the first place. If we go to not C++, but rather the linker, and we go to general, and we say additional library directories. If I delete that for a minute and then say, oh, apply, okay, and I try to run this, problems, it says cannot open this lib file. And yeah, so that's a problem, a nice error to see. Okay, and also if I go ahead and make another change here, which is this is I'm reverting back to the default. Usually when you open up linker, general, and input, you will see no additional library directories to include, and also no additional dependencies. The additional dependencies, what does this evaluate to? Edit additional the core library dependencies, whatever this means. It's a Visual Studio thing. Okay, so we say okay, and now we'll see a different error, and I think we'll say I don't know what this function is. Unresolved external symbol. So we see this a lot. This means that this function the function definition is not found anywhere, okay, because we didn't include the library file as an additional dependency, the lib file. So in order to do that, where the header is here, but the function definition isn't found, this is just like saying, it is similar to saying void do something right here, and you have no function definition, and then you call this function. So if you say do something, you attempt to call it, we're going to see a second error right now that it says unresolved external symbol do something, because I don't have a definition. If I do add a definition like this, then that error goes away. The one error goes away, the do something error goes away. So we aren't seeing it here. Okay. All right, so how do I get at this function definition, the demo int function definition, which again, if we go to our other project, it was just the do demo void function said this got printed by demo function, and demo int function returned 121. Okay. So I'm getting at this point, cannot call unless, and instead of typing this comment, I'm making a little video to myself to explain it to myself and to possible students. Okay, so we go to properties and we say general, and we say additional library directories. And that additional library directory is, we've already seen it, it's that lib file that I generated. So it was from the top, testing library inclusion. Excuse me. Miscellaneous and simple lib file test here, not the header file or the CPP file, but rather in the 64-bit debug, there's the executable, a DLL file, which we might want to include. The difference between a DLL, one difference between a dynamically linked library and a statically linked library is statically linked is larger. And that's all I will try to say about that for now. Okay, so this is the file that we want. It's got the compiled code. I think it's compiled. It's definitely unreadable, not human readable. But this is the directory. So I'm going to copy that directory, come here and paste paste it in additional library directories. If we want to do this a different way, we could go to edit and paste here and then say okay, okay, and apply. Now, okay, will get us a little further. We won't see, let's see, what will we see? Let's remind ourselves of that. It says unresolved external symbol. So it looks like we haven't made any progress, but we have. Go to properties and then input under the linker. I'm remembering something in C++, so maybe it was the additional include directories that I'm thinking about. Optimization, preprocessor. This is preprocess to a file. That could be a nice thing to select if you want to. That could be nice to see. Language. Don't think any changes there. Precompiled headers, those can be possibly beneficial. Output files. Okay. Advanced. Okay. Don't think anything here is necessary for the library files. Input. So the additional dependencies, what we want, it gives an example here, so that's nice to read. Specifies additional items to add to the link. Okay, kernel32.lib. But what we want is this file name right here. Okay. So I just copy that, and if I put a semicolon there to separate those two, and click apply and okay, and run, it finally works. Okay, so wonderful. 421 got printed because I said cout A. All right. Now, what about DLL file? That was written to it 152. I'm just curious to test this. Simple library test. Let me build to a DLL. Dynamic library. Okay, and build. I'm curious if we'll see an update here or up to date. Yeah, succeeded. Okay, made a difference. So DLL just got written to at 227. I'm curious if there are potential performance and space benefits of DLL versus static. Okay, so now what happens if I remove the lib file and call it the DLL file instead? Apply, okay, are we still working? No. Wow, interesting. Hmm. Linker error 1107. What does this say? I believe I've seen this error before, and it's an interesting one. Resolve this past the OBJ file instead. Huh, interesting. Well, let's see if that works. OBJ file instead. Oops. Is it in the same directory? No, but oops. Cannot open OBJ. Yeah, it's because it's not in the right place, I imagine. Yeah, okay. I'll leave off on that for now. I think that's it. I wanted to make sure I didn't break anything just then. Okay, run again. And we're running again. Okay. Well, that's good.